Want to learn about writing picture books? Then this is the episode for you. Hi, my name is author Tonya Duncan Ellis with another episode of Write This, my author interview show. And today I'm thrilled to welcome talented children's author Alliah Agostini to talk about her writing journey and her current and upcoming projects. So I'm so thrilled to have her on. I've been a fan of her books for quite a while, so this is a thrill to have her on the show. I see that she has already popped in, so let me send her for another episode. Hope that your new year is going well and that you're starting off with a wonderful 2024. So let's get the show started. She's here. Hey, Alliah, how are you doing?
Good, Tanya. How are you doing?
Fine. I'm so happy to have you on. I had the illustrator of your book, Big Tune, on a few months ago, and I
Okay,
loved it
awesome.
so much.
Good, good.
And
Glad to hear that.
was thrilled to see that in all your other works. And you've got a book on Juneteenth and then your upcoming cookbook about Juneteenth.
Yeah,
And I have a
you
book
do too.
about Juneteenth coming too, so I can't wait to collaborate with you on
Yeah, for
those
sure,
projects.
for sure, for sure. No, I was glad to see that you had a book about Emancipation Park coming out. It's amazing. There's so many different parts of the Juneteenth holiday and the Juneteenth story that people are learning about and uncovering. So I'm glad that there's a lot of different perspectives that are being shared. So,
Yeah,
anyways, but I'll let you
yeah. And
continue here. Yeah,
before
yeah.
we go on or go off to tell your story, I live about 40 miles from the actual spot where Juneteenth was
Oh, that's
announced.
awesome.
Yeah, and Van Garrett has a book, his
Hmm.
book Juneteenth talks about the spot and the mural and art in that area.
Yeah.
So there is just so much information. I can't wait for your cookbook to come out.
Yeah,
And
no, no, same. It's like a cookbook and activity book too. So it's just lots of different ways that people can engage with the holiday with their families, and then of course also there's things that you can literally use all year round too. So
yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know, where you're located and a little bit about your author journey, how you became a writer.
Yeah, certainly. So I am based in New Jersey, outside of New York City. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, but my family, I'm a third generation Buffalonian on my mom's side. On my dad's side, I'm actually a first generation American. My father's from Guyana in South America, so they go for the Caribbean. And from my African American side, I represent both through my writing. So my background is a very traditional writer route. I feel like there's absolutely no traditional writer route actually, which I'm finding, and it's pretty cool. So my background is actually in marketing and brand marketing. So, but I do have some background in publishing before that. I graduated from college and decided to go into publishing, but I was on the magazine side of things. I worked in kind of like the sales side, and I always loved the printed word. But then I decided to go back to business school and became a consumer packaged goods marketer. So I went to Cincinnati for a brief stint and worked at Procter and Gamble marketing tampons of all things. Everybody needs them. People need them. And then I went into beauty marketing for like a much smaller company called EOS Products, and I marketed lip balm and lotion, and it was pretty cool because it was kind of at the beginning of like the influencer tide. But I always wanted to do something more creative and smaller. So then actually after my daughter was born, I started doing marketing more freelance, and it was fun, and I always enjoyed kind of writing as part of what I was doing, and writing blogs, and just coming up with things. And I just realized that everything I was doing was kind of chasing something that was a little bit more creative. So when the pandemic hit and the time that I had was limited, and a lot of other things had happened before then, I was really thinking about how I want to make sure I'm spending my time appropriately, how I want to make sure that my legacy kind of lives on, and what I should be doing with my time. And I'd always been writing down ideas for kids' books. There's nothing like, for me, motherhood to kind of reconnect me with literature, because I loved reading so much when I was a kid. I was so excited about all the books that were now available for kids that looked like mine. But then as I started looking at the flaps, I was like, how many of these books are actually written by us? This is kind of funny to me. So anyway, I also realized that there were a lot more stories that needed to be told. And I had a couple of ideas that just kept on nagging at me. And eventually I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to figure out how to make these books, because I don't know if I'm going to go the traditional route, and I don't know if I'm going to go the self-published route. But I need to make sure that these happen. So then I just started telling people that I knew. I was like, hey, I'm trying to write some books. Like, what do you know? And before you know it, somebody always knows somebody. So I started talking to people, and somebody told me about SCBWI. So I looked up SCBWI, figured out what that was. Somebody told me about the Quayle Conference. I was like, okay, I'll sign that up. I can't wait to go in April 2020. Of course, it was canceled, in person, and I went virtually. But I just started talking to people about, what this means, found out what querying was. There's so many things. I was like, oh, that person is, that this illustrator is your friend. Can you ask them if they'll illustrate my book? Of course, that person who's a very famous illustrator is not just going to go and illustrate this nobody, this book from nobody that's agented. So I asked a lot of the right questions, asked a lot of the wrong questions, just gathered information until I finally had, some manuscripts that I really liked. And I wound up meeting a friend of my husband's from college who was a middle grade author. And, we talked via Zoom, and I shared some of my work with her, and she was starting a critique group. And I think that really kind of helped me out. And I wound up working with some authors that were also published. And I kept on coming with new things every time. And they were like, that's not normal, right? I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I make up ideas all the time. I have all these book ideas. And some of them were able to give me referrals. And I queried a bunch, and I got a lot of rejections. And eventually I finally was agented in March of 2021. And the book that got me agented was Big Tune. And then that landed with a 2-book deal. And then from there, things kind of continued to go. So it's been really something. It's really the pandemic that kind of was the timing of my going onto this literary trajectory. But it's been good because I've been able to build community throughout the time that I wouldn't have expected. And, being an author could be pretty lonely. But there's something about the writing community and being able to develop it online and in person that's really been great for me too.
And something that struck me listening to your story is there's a lot of people that have kind of what you call a shadow career before they become writers. And it seems like really this was kind of in your heart all along, and it kind of, then you had that opportunity to go on and go with it.
For sure. I think so many people overlook the things that come to them a little bit more naturally and what their callings are. And sometimes, like I said at the beginning, there's no traditional route for becoming a writer. I mean, you have people that go to MFA programs and that have degrees in literature, and they're a fair number, but there's so many people that just have stories in their heart and this really strong urge to do something with them and to share them. And I guess I'd consider myself more in that camp. And I was like, what does marketing have to do with writing books? And I was like, it has everything to do with it, especially, when you're talking about, I mean, I marketed lip balm and tampons and a number of other things too. But you think about each book as a product, who wants to buy this particular book? Who will really be touched by, actually, I should say more than anything, who will be touched by this book? So whether they're just reading it, whether they get it from the library, you want to make sure that each book is going to touch somebody in a specific way. And so just thinking about that and how to reach those people is something that is really core to, when I'm making something. And then I realize how my experiences before this all kind of meld together into what I'm doing now.
And I also have an MBA. I graduated from WashU in St. Louis, Washington University.
A couple of WashU friends. Yeah, a couple of my best friends went there. That's awesome.
Probably they're younger than me, but
hey, it's all WashU fam. Woosels.
Yeah. But it is a lot of times, because when I was coming up, I always loved writing, but I went to journalism, or I worked at a newspaper for a while because I just didn't know about how could I write books. I didn't really see that as an option for a career for myself at the time. But there's so many ways that you can use your creativity that are out here. So that's very interesting. Now, I see you have a new book out on Oprah, A Little Golden Book. Can you tell us how that came about and tell us about that book?
Yeah, so Oprah Winfrey, A Little Golden Book biography. I was really excited. This one came out in November. A lot of people are familiar with the Little Golden Book biography series because of the ridiculous success of the Taylor Swift one, which is like #1 picture book or something right now. So I originally, when I started writing, I was writing mostly fiction, but the first book that I had come out was a nonfiction book, the Juneteenth story. So I was like, it was something that I kind of fell into, and I actually really liked the process. So my agent had mentioned that little golden book was developing their biographies line. And, I had a biography that I'd written about somebody else. And she was like, well, if you're interested in pitching for this, let me know, because, we can use some of your existing work for it. And she asked if there was anybody I, was interested in writing a biography about. And I had a few people that I'd mentioned. I figured they probably already had something lined up for Oprah. And Oprah wasn't on that list, mainly because I was like, I've got Oprah already, but they actually didn't have somebody lined up for her yet. And they were like, would you be interested in writing a book about Oprah? And I was like, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So no, I did not meet Oprah in the process, but I got to, become intimately familiar with her. And it was fun. I got to, what I enjoyed doing, of course, is kind of getting as close for, primary sources as possible. And the good thing about Oprah being in the public domain is, obviously, there's plenty about her, and there's plenty of her speeches. So I loved kind of just like poring over her speeches and her personal essays about her life to see, what really resonated, with the moments in her life that really made a difference. And of course, there are a number of books that are written about her too. So I did read some of those just to kind of understand like what beats people use. And also I wanted to make sure I was approaching some of the things that were more so holes that really weren't talked about as much. One thing I noticed, for instance, is, and I don't know if it was for political reasons, but like her impact on the Obama campaign, I felt was something that people really oftentimes didn't talk about as much. And maybe some of the kids' books about her. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, this woman helped elect our first Black president. Very, 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 very competent at that. Like, we need to make sure we're celebrating that to show like what power and what influence that can be. So it's actually been pretty cool because the book came out right around right before The Color Purple. So we've been seeing Oprah everywhere, in her purple, shouting, popping up at places, doing what she does. But it was really fun to do the event that I had in our community out here in Jersey, and to hear what kids remembered about Oprah after we talked about her, because of course we know who Oprah is. We remember when she was on TV, and daily. But for some kids, they have different perspectives on her. So I was talking to some of my friends with 3-year-olds, and they were like, "Oh, my daughter knows her as the girl who likes dogs." I was like, she thinks of Oprah as the girl who likes dogs. I was like, okay, because Oprah had a lot of dogs over the years.
Oh, okay.
And there's somebody else who was like, I'm like Oprah because it's a friend of mine, her daughter's very bright. So at the very beginning, Oprah, writes her teacher a note on the first day of kindergarten to tell her that she doesn't belong here because she knows a lot of big words. And I was like, yeah, my friend's daughter probably would do the same thing too. So it's so fun to be able to share an icon story, but more so from a kid's perspective, but also to help kids find some point of connectivity between themselves and this person who's an icon, to really show them that one day they potentially could be an icon too. You just never know.
And talk about legacy.
Yeah.
You were saying you were looking to start that legacy. So that's amazing that you've been able to have these impactful stories and bring them to our children.
It's been really special. I have 2 young kids myself. They are 6 and 9. So it's fun to be in this moment with them at that age, because they are, and well, more so my son who's 6, they are at that picture book age. So it's really special. And it's also nice to be able to, interact with our community and their friends, and, my friends' kids, and to really be able to provide them with books that I hope they love. I mean, I get good feedback from them, and I don't think it's just because they're trying to be nice, but hey, you never know. So it's nice that these will be around for them, for a little while.
That's good. And you talked a bit about being involved in critique groups and things. Can you talk about that importance, or how that can help you as an author?
Yeah, for sure. I think, as I mentioned before, being like on a writer's journey can be very solitary pursuit. It can be very lonely. I mean, of course, you have other people that help you along the way, but on a day-to-day basis, your touch point is that's like yourself, your brain, your computer. So when I got started, my critique group, we haven't been as active recently, but we do touch base, from time to time. We would meet monthly. And there were about 4, and at first there were 4 of us, and then we went to 5. And we would share our manuscripts with each other and get feedback. And it was really helpful to get a fresh set of eyes that also was knowledgeable to kind of help me. You would see your manuscript and you hear it a different way, but there's nothing like somebody else reading it and kind of getting a fresh perspective on it. Especially, for instance, like I write in rhyme sometimes, so I know how I would say the words of a book, but it's a lot different when somebody else reads it cold. And that's something that's really important because, for writing rhyme, you need anybody to be able to pick up that book and to read it the same way that you might. So it's extremely difficult in that way. But for anything, whether it's in rhyme or, or it's in prose or verse, it's non-rhyming. It's really helpful to have this fresh set of eyes and ears for people that hopefully that you trust. And then again, you'll get feedback and you don't have to take all of it. If there's something that you feel really strongly about, you can thank them for their feedback and keep it moving. But it has certainly helped my work improve, and it also just kind of keeps you accountable for continuing to create work. And you're like, if you have a monthly critique group and you want to deliver something every time, I know for some people there's like I just can't write, but it's like if I know I have a deadline, I work towards that.
Right.
And people with different regional accents do
And
read
I
books differently.
found I was in a picture book critique group, and
Yeah,
that during the pandemic, it made me produce so much more work because I'm
yeah,
like, oh, I got to get for my critique group. And then I got a larger body of picture book
yeah,
manuscripts because that encouraged me to go ahead and get things
exactly.
done.
There's nothing like positive peer
Yeah.
pressure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that really
yeah,
helps. So
yeah.
they're appearing. Now, what books can you tell us about your upcoming book, the Juneteenth Recipe, and any other projects that you've
Yeah,
got coming up?
yeah, for sure. So I have the Juneteenth cookbook is coming out April 2nd. It's a collaboration with, Chef Tappy Elrod was the recipe developer on the project. And I was like, I had to give her props because this woman can cook. And I went to make sure. And Sawyer Cloud, who did the illustrations for the Juneteenth story, which is right. I'm like trying to figure out where
That's
I
right.
right up here.
Over there.
Is back to do the illustrations. I'm really excited about this one. We, I wanted it to be something that was really fun and kind of touched on all the different things we could do about Juneteenth. And we were initially talking about the book, it was going to be a cookbook only, but I was like, there's so much more we can do from, crafts to games and little field trips and things like that too. I want to make this really like a 360 type of approach. Um, so I developed kind of like a menu of different, some of the pages are available on Bookshop now, and you can see a little bit snippets. But we have drinks and appetizers, main sides, and desserts. And so they're designed to be made with the whole family. Some things kids can do relatively independently. A lot of, some of them will require some adult supervision or help, especially depending on, the age of the kids. But they're really all recipes that are designed to be, used all year round potentially, or especially during our barbecue season. So there is, of course, an introduction to Juneteenth, not quite as in depth as the Juneteenth story, but gives people some flavor and some background of the holiday. But then also talks about some of the traditions and the foods that are used throughout the book, because I really wanted to make sure that they were, of course, tied to Juneteenth and also, different elements of the African diaspora. There are a couple of creative projects in there too. So there's one activity that's around printing your own T-shirts with, some, that's a little bit easier than screen printing. So we'll see how it turns out. But, it's fun. My grandfather helped found the Juneteenth celebration in Buffalo, and he was always known as like the T-shirt guy. So he screen printed some of the very first paraphernalia for the Buffalo celebration. So I was like, let me try to bring a little bit of element of that into this
And
book. And
that's
there,
really interesting,
yeah,
Aliyah, because
yeah.
last year I wanted a new Juneteenth t-shirt and I
Yeah.
couldn't even find any in the stores in my
Oh,
area. I was
really?
shocked.
Oh, that's surprising. I feel like so many people have started selling them. But yeah,
Right.
now it's just a way for you to kind of do something on your own, so you can make a custom one. Let's see, and I also have a list of field trips that you can take. So some virtual or some in person, depending on where you live. So places where you can go and get a taste of Juneteenth, either celebrations or elements of Juneteenth's history. So of course, for people that are in Texas like yourself, Emancipation Park is certainly a destination that's listed on there,
Yeah.
as well as, Ashton Villa and some other places too.
That
But
sounds cool.
it should be a lot of fun. And I love music, as you probably could tell from Big Tune. So the last piece is one of my favorites. It's called like the Let's Dance portion, and it has like a suggested playlist of Juneteenth activities and things that you can do. So it includes a lot of throwback music, from like everything from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then of course there's a little bit of swag surfing in there too, because that too is an African American tradition. So I was like, let's make sure we have that in there too. So it's really kind of just like a very celebratory book. I can't wait for people to see it, but it comes out April 2nd. So there's that. Then the next book I have coming out in fall is it's a fiction book. It's called Great Idea Malia with Holiday House. And it's about a little girl who is very spirited, very creative, very ambitious. It's about her and her mom gets a big new job. And she gets a little bit stressed out, so Malia decides to take it upon herself to help her mother with her job, because that's exactly what her mother needs.
Right.
So anyway, so it's a lot of fun. I've told to my friends, especially my friends from business school, about it, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, this is our life. This is our life. This is my child. This is our life." So I think there's some cringeworthy moments in there, but it's a really sweet book. It's about a little girl who just really has really big sights for herself, and she sees the big idea, but the smaller ideas, it's trying to find the value in those a little bit more challenging. But I think that there's some kind of balance of both. So I hope that families have fun with it. So got that one. I have an easy reader called Black Sea Play, and I think that'll be coming out before the end of the year. It's about a family and their smart speaker. So basically their equivalent of I can't say the word aloud or else it'll activate it in their house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the smart speaker has difficulty understanding one of the kids, and they get frustrated about it. So
That's
it's a
neat.
sibling story, but it's
That's really different.
it's very, very contemporary, and I hope relatable. And then in 25, I have uh, Scare Sighted. So Scare Sighted, Scared and Excited on the First Day of School. Um, it'll be coming out in, I think, is it March or April of 25. And that'll be a lot of fun. It's about all the mixed up, mashed up emotions that people feel on the first day of school. So scared and excited, of course, is one of them. But there are a lot of words that are kind of portmanteaus or just made up to explore one little girl's feelings on the first day of school. And one thing that it also talks about is the difficulty with, for people that have, we'll call them lesser practice names, like my own, on the first day of school, and some of the things that they deal with too. So I wanted to make sure to include that in the book as well. And I'm really fortunate to be working with a number of really talented illustrators on each of these. From let's see, as I mentioned, Sawyer is doing the Juneteenth cookbook. For Great Idea Malia, Olivia DeCastro. She also has Cute Toots, I think, coming out with Brianna McDaniel. Let's see, Paige Mason for Black Sea Play, and Lala Watkins for Scare Sighted. And then there's some more stuff to come that hopefully I can announce soon. But
Wow.
I think
So
one
you are
announcement that'll be coming soon.
busy, girl. You are busy.
Yeah, I have like so much stuff. It's so funny. Like I'm using my computer as a very like expensive phone stand, and I was like working on something right before this. So like I have Great Idea Malia. I'm like, just drop the M. Like my kids and my husband hear all the time. Okay, yes, Alan.
Right.
Yeah, I'm constantly like, hey guys, I have an idea for something. They're like, oh really? Do you? I'm so surprised.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then think back when you started, in 2020.
Yeah.
Would you imagine, what do you think you'd think about if you could see yourself now?
I would be like, are you serious? Like for real? I mean, there's just so many parts in my journey. Like even the fact that I'm writing kids books. I mean, obviously, like I didn't go to business school to become a children's author, but I look back at all of the things that I did leading up to it, and I was like, it just makes so much sense,
Mm.
And I really feel like creativity is such a muscle, and for me, the more I'm exercising it, like the more I just want to use it. It gets better, like, and I want to just do it more.
Mhm.
So I just love that. Like I look back at my career and the things that I've done so far, and I've constantly been chasing something more creative. And it's just so nice to be actually within that creative center right now, and to be focusing my time on it, because it's so extremely fulfilling. And I think that so many of us, people of color, like we're typically coached to go into the safe for careers, and there's a number of reasons for that, of course, because the need to, to make a living, and to, to provide for our families, et cetera, but also because we want to make sure that we're doing something that we know, is a more traditional path. And I didn't know any authors growing up. I didn't know any illustrators growing up. So I'm really glad that now, at least within our community, people can look to me and be like, oh, you actually can be an author. Like that actually is a thing. And I'm sure it's very much the same, for you as well. So,
Yeah, so this is wonderful.
yeah,
Now, where can people find you once
yeah.
this is over and buy your books?
Oh, of course. So you can find me here, Aliago, Alliago on Instagram. I'm theoretically still that on X, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, but I don't really do anything over there anymore. I'm kind of like whatever. Let's see. I'm on TikTok like sometimes under Alliah is Right, like Alliah IS and then WRITE. And then my website is just AliahAgostini.com. So, but I just say just go on over to Instagram. That's typically where I hang out. I have one broadcast channel that I send things out to from time to time. But Instagram is definitely probably the best way to catch me.
Okay.
So yeah. And then as far as my books go, you can get them anywhere. If you go to my website, mostly they're linked there. But I'm on, the big online thing, of course, but I definitely far more encourage you to use your local bookstore, because even if my books aren't in stock there, they can typically request them and they'll be there within whatever amount of time.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mom.
See that? Yeah, that's nice. She's proud of her baby.
Yeah,
That's good.
thank you, Mom. She was like, how do I get on this thing on my computer beforehand? I was like, just go to the website. It's kind of the same, but she's on the IG app. I see her checking her reels all the
Yeah,
time. So
that's nice. I'm just,
yeah,
your whole story it gives hope to people who want to pursue their creativity and, they see that this can
yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
And I
I
love the
know.
stories you're bringing for our kids, bringing
Thank you so much.
right. And
Thank you.
also, I'm excited, y'all, because in February, Alliah and I will be at Kindling Words Writing Retreat, so I'll get to meet you in person
Yeah,
there. So I'm excited.
same. It's funny. Yeah, the bio book just came out, and I was literally. I told you I was like, oh, I can't wait to look at this, and then I got some other email and I got distracted. So as soon as you mentioned that, you saw that I was going to be on there, I was like, oh, let me see what else was coming. So
It,
it looks like it's going to be a great group of people. So I can't wait to meet a lot of these folks in person. So the
it,
writing community is really quite something. I had no idea what to expect, but I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And I also have to shout out my Aunt Monica. Hey, Aunt Monica.
yeah. So we're having a family
Yeah,
reunion up in here.
we are having
Everybody's coming
we are having a family reunion. There's a family reunion all up through my work. So people are like, yeah, my kids are like, is that one about me? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. What do you think? But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for your time, Alliah, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Make sure to check her out, support her, buy all of her books, and we will see you next week for another episode of Write
All right.
This. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.